Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the Post-Valentines Day edition of A Flawed Man of God. My name is Stuart Davis. I am a flawed man. I am not a pastor, not a biblical scholar. I have not been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my congregation or to donate to any special cause. What I am here to do is to give you exposure, give you some insights, give you a look inside the mind of me, as I consider myself, an average Christian, calling myself just a Christian, not assigning myself or assigning myself or aligning myself with any doctrine or denomination. I'm just here to give my takes. I'm reading through the Bible. That's what tonight's episode's all about, and that's what we're going to be getting into. And oddly enough, like I say, it's very weird when we do these things, how some of these things line up. We're going to be talking about unlawful sexual relations. And in Leviticus, which is a book mostly concerned with the rules, of the Israelites that God has established and set down for them, rules that are part of their covenant, with God, and giving their expectations. God setting them up to be a successful culture, to set them aside from the sinful, non-righteous, and unbelieving cultures that are around them. The peoples who are currently residing in the promised land. They are going to take them out, and everywhere else in the world. So God has chosen Moses because he chose Jacob, because he chose Isaac, because he chose Abraham, and I guess eventually because he chose Noah, to establish a covenant with the Israelites, with the Hebrews, with these folks, to be basically the banner carriers of his will and what his expectations are. Now, have they screwed up? Have they ticked off God? Yes, they have made some pretty incredible missteps along the way, but because of God's love for them, for love of people in general, his desire and his plan for us, he has withheld his hand once again from wiping the Israelites off the map, and that's good for us, because from the Israelites we eventually get the and that's not what I'm trying to do. One of these days I'll figure that out. From the Israelites eventually lands Christ. He is born in that line. He is there, and he dies for our sins, and he wipes away a lot of the punishments and a lot of the punishments, earthly punishments, and a lot of some of the offerings that are part of what we're reading here in Leviticus. It's a dry chapter. Like I said, we probably are going to finish it up by Friday, which would be good. But again, just because it's dry, just because it's difficult to get through, it's kind of legalistic, does not mean it does not have good tidbits of information. And we're going to go over a little bit of the more obvious ones tonight. Again, we're going to be talking about what not to do, where not to stick your private parts, or where not to let somebody else stick their private parts in your body. So that's chapter 18. We will be moving over in 19 and 20. We will be talking about other things that you're not supposed to do and what the punishments are involved. But again, these are things that God does not want us to do. He specifically sets these aside into their own category here. They're not part of the food rules, which seem to be thrown out by Christ when he's doing his walk throughout the earth. These and some of the other laws are set aside in their own categories, and they are not cast out. However, the punishments for those are extended because through Christ we have grace. So we're going to read through this so that we understand what the rules are. And from there, we can understand that God doesn't change those rules. He just comes to fulfill. He comes to fulfill that when Christ arrives on this earth. So with that said, we will talk about that some more tonight. But first, if you like what this program is about, if you like listening to what I have to say, then please like, subscribe on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Share this with other people that you think might need to hear it. That would be great. It's very helpful. I feel like I've got this show heading in a very good direction. It's getting more organized. I do have some structural things I need to work about with the program as far as my own presentation from time to time, but I think that things are working pretty well. I've gotten some very good feedback, and really what I need now is exposure. So tune in, comment. The more you comment, the more you tell me what's going on, the better the content of the show. The more, because I want it to be interactive. I want to hear what your thoughts are as I read through these things, to tell me what you think. And it might get a little awkward tonight. Might get a little obvious at the same time. Let me turn that on mute. Might get a little obvious at the same time. I put in the notes that West Virginians aren't going to like this. I'm making fun of West Virginians because I'm going into making jokes about marrying your relatives, which Leviticus is talking about specifically. Don't take this personally, West Virginia. I love you very much, but you as a Virginian. As a Virginian, you know the rivalry. You knew this has to be said. You know this has to be gone. This has to be done. That said, again, follow me if you like this. That'll be great. I'll appreciate it. Chat. If you've got something you say, if you've got something that I say that impacts you in a way that you're motivated to hear it, please follow it. Please go through that, and I will definitely respond to it. Whether it's while I'm doing the show live or after the fact, just comment. I want to get that. I want to get that interaction. And like I said, as the audience grows, I'm in the dozens of viewers per night, which is fine with me. But I want it to be higher. I want it to be higher, and I'm doing that by bringing more people on. Next week's going to be big. I told you that was my goal for this year, is to really grow the channel, both in content and in viewers. And I'm definitely doing my job on the content. I just need the viewers to catch up. So that'll be good. But either way, I'm going to keep doing this. I like doing it. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. All right. Let me share my screen here, and we can get into these 3 chapters of Leviticus moving forward. All right, so I don't like that. Let's do it this way. Unlawful sexual relations. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, I am the Lord your God. You must not do as they do in Egypt, where you used to live, and you must not do as they do in the land of Canaan, where I am bringing you." See, what did I tell you? Do not follow their practices. You must obey my laws and be careful to follow my decrees. I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and laws, for the person who obeys them will live by them. I am the Lord. No one is to approach any close relative to have sexual relations. I am the Lord. All right, now you understand why I was making the West Virginia joke. But this is serious, right? We culturally look down on incestuous behavior, and that's basically what most of these unlawful sexual relations are going to surround. What exactly constitutes biblical incestuous behavior? It's going to break it down here. But incest is not the only thing that it's going to be going to discuss. Do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother. Do not have relations with her. Pretty obvious. Don't do your mom. Despite what Sigmund Freud has to say about that, most of us truly don't have that issue, and that's pretty cut and dry. Open and shut. Don't do it. Do not have sexual relations with your father's wife. That would dishonor your father. Okay, so we got a couple of things here. Obviously, especially at this time, many men have multiple wives. So this is not talking about if you have. This is not talking about the mom specifically, but if your dad has another wife, don't have sex with her. That would be wrong. And we get into cuckoldry, and we don't want to do that either. That lessens you, and it definitely lessens your father. Definitely lessens him as a man, and it lessens you as a righteous person. So don't do it. It's not to be done. Cuckoldry is looked down upon several times in this chapter of the Bible, meaning that God specifically doesn't like it. It's not good. It's not good for anybody's psychological well-being, mental health, and their spiritual health when this stuff goes on. For anybody involved. Do not have sexual relations with your sister, either your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether she was born in the same home or elsewhere. So obviously we're talking about full-blooded sister or half-sister. And it sounds like even if she's adopted or a stepsister too, because that's still kind of weird. Do not have sexual relations with your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter. That would dishonor you. So not your grandkids or your granddaughter. This is mostly directed towards men, right? Because again, still for the most part, the men are and almost completely the men are the leaders of the household, and so these rules are being passed to them for understanding. Do not have sexual relations with the daughter of your father's wife born to your father. She is your sister. Yes, the daughter of your father. Yes, that would be a half sister there too. So yeah. Do not have sexual relations with your father's sister. She is your father's close relative. Yes, she's your aunt. Do not have sexual relations with your mother's sister because she is your mother's close relative. Do not dishonor your father's brother by approaching his wife to have sexual relations. She is your aunt. So yeah, even if it's by marriage, don't do it. You're not supposed to do it. So we cover the aunts. Do not have sexual relations with your daughter-in-law. She is your son's wife. Do not have relations with her. The same thing here as well. We discussed above, only in reverse with the father's wife. Don't do it. Again, we're talking about all this is adultery, cuckoldry, and incest. It's all bad. And in many cases that we're listing here, they're overlapping. So you're having sin compound upon sin. Do not have sexual relations with your brother's wife. That would dishonor your brother. Of course. And again, all these things we're talking about familial strains, and God is all about the family. God is all about the family. He understands it. And once you have a family that's operating in the way that God would find to be pleasing, you understand more about what the whole purpose behind it is. And this kind of stuff going on breaks that up faster than anything else. Nothing else is a bigger slight than adultery. It's just, to me, it's one of the lowest forms of disloyalty, dishonor, taking advantage of a relationship or a friendship, whether it's, whether you were doing this to a family member or a close friend or somebody you don't even know, or even an enemy. This is stuff that goes on that's not meant for us. It lessens us. Let's see. Do not have sexual relations with both a woman and her daughter. Do not have sexual relations with either her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter. They are her close relatives. That is wickedness, right? Because you're doing it, but you're drawing them into it as well. Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife and have sexual relations with her while your wife is living. And God is basically saying, don't do what Jacob did. Now, fairness to Jacob, he was always supposed to end up with Rachel. In his mind, that was the woman he loved. That's the woman he wanted. And his uncle or distant uncle or whatever it was he was set him up for the okie doke and had him marry the other sister. So that wasn't the intent. Jacob never had the intent to marry anybody other than Rachel. He just wanted to marry Rachel, but that's not how it started. But we see the discord, we see the dysfunction in things. That was something that I was hammering on when we talked about that situation with Joseph and his 11 brothers, why that was such a weird thing going on. It was funny because a few weeks ago when Billy Dyer was at my church speaking, he did the same thing. The topic he was talking about was Joseph, and he led in with Joseph, and he said, obviously this is a weird family situation. We made that case when we were doing our read through. It needs to be pointed out when these things go on. It's more than just reading this and say, oh, well, that's just what they did back then. It's, yeah, they did, but look at the problems that arose through it, which is why that Christianity focuses so much more on monogamy than anything else. Because when you do the sister wife thing, there's always a chance for rivalry, and maybe the women can get along, but that doesn't mean the kids can get along. It's just a really odd thing to put forth. Do not approach a woman to have sexual relations during the uncleanliness of her monthly period. Hopefully you're not into that. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. That doesn't mean somebody you share a neighborhood with. That means anybody. When the Bible refers to your neighbor, he's talking about your brother in Christ, or your brother in this case, because Christ isn't somebody that we're following at this point. They're talking about your fellow Israelite. They're talking about your fellow man. Neighbor is your fellow man. Don't do it. It's not just family members. Don't do it to anybody. Here's an important one. Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech, for you must not profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Molech, much like Baal, is a demon or a false idol of some sort. Maybe even Satan himself, not sure, but he is a being that is worshipped by the other tribes outside of the Hebrews, the Israelites, and they are sacrificing to him. And this is when we talk about child sacrifice. You don't see that in the Bible. But biblically, child sacrifice does not happen. There is one instance where a man sacrifices a child, actually goes through with it, and there's a whole thing about it. And God doesn't ask him to do it. It was something that he came up with all on his own. Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable. Let's follow this real quick. This is in recent years, this has been one of the most hotly contested components of Christianity and source of several big schisms in churches, both the local community level, or speaking of that, love face, block user. We're gonna block that. We're gonna block that one, and we're gonna block that one too. Weird. I hate spammers. I don't have that problem that much because it's not that huge of a channel. And block user. Anyway, this has been a cause for many great schisms in the community church and in the more organized church. Most recently, we've seen this in the Methodist church split, but we've seen it before in the Episcopalian church. We see this rearing its head in the Catholic Church. We've seen this in the Church of Christ. Homosexuality is sin. I've said this before on this channel, and I will continue to say that because here we are. We're right here in Leviticus, chapter 18, verse 22. Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable. Don't do it. Okay. The difference between what we talk about here and the punishments for these things is the punishment, not the law. Christ comes and gives us grace. He separates us from our sin. It is our choice to continue living in that sin and committing ourselves to that sin. But he is the one who is saying, hey, even if you struggle with something, even something you're not supposed to do, if you put it behind, if you confront it, if you take your efforts to overcome them, grace is going to be given to you. If you repent, that's what this whole thing, again, the Bible is a story of redemption. It's all about getting over the things that you're not supposed to do. You don't get over the things that you're not supposed to do by saying it's okay. And that's the big problem that goes on in the church right now, is that so many people want to modernize it. Now, you've heard me talk about before recently about how you go onto Twitter or you go onto Facebook and you get into these theological discussions that people are at each other's throats. And one of the things I've said is that we need to stop doing that. We need to heal the rifts between the denominations should be healed at least somewhat, and we should work with each other to try to bring more people to Christ, because the doctrine's not that big of a deal when it's true to Scripture, right? You might be interpreting it a little bit different, but the fundamentals are still the same. The rules are still understood to be the rules. The where I draw the line on that is the quote unquote modernization of the church. It's not, they say modernizing because it's talking about God's laws and how they should conform to today's society, to today's culture, and into equality and equity and all these buzzwords and all these talking points that you see that they try to put in there to make because they don't like what the rules say. You can't change the rule. You don't change the truth. You can't do that. Or you can do that and fool people about it, but that doesn't change the reality of the thing. Same thing about when they talk about gender fluidity, when they talk about all the other things that just fly in the face of what we know is natural and provable by science. We take things that we should seriously embrace as a ministry point, which is mental illness, which is pervasive and sad, and something that we should all work towards facing head on and addressing, and doing so with love and grace, in saying that this isn't an issue. It's not actually not a mental illness. It's actually not a sin. These are things that are okay, and God is okay with it. God is not okay with it. God is not okay with it. And if you start to if you fooled yourself into thinking it is, you set yourself up for a big fall. And the one thing I worry about, and it's not just with this, but it's with anything, any sin that you have wrapped yourself in and tried to convince yourself that God thinks it's okay, is when you are standing in judgment and you are presented with this, are you going to be able to let that go? Or are you going to argue? Are you going to say, no, this is not the case? No, this is who I am. If you're defined by your sin, if you let your soul be defined by its sin, you'll be condemned by it. Don't do it. And if you slip up, I mean, if you have these urges and you give in, that's what repentance is before. That's what confessing your sins to a friend or to Christ, because that's part of repenting, understanding that it's a sin and trying to move past it. That's what's important. That's what you need to be working on right there, and not saying, well, it's okay because society tells me it's okay, and it's walking or choosing that as a reason to walk away from God. Don't let your mistakes hold you back. This is again, you don't let your sin keep you from salvation. Don't let other people shame you or try to coach you into walking away into apostasy. It's not the way. It's not the way of things. And like I said, that's not to say that somebody who struggles with these sins, whether it's any of these sexual sins, are some of the hardest to confront, because there are so many wide-ranging opinions about them. And while incest is largely viewed as specifically taboo and looked upon with disgust, homosexuality has been normalized in our culture, and that's an issue. That's an issue. That's not to say that we need to punish people or shun them or cast them out and do all these other things. You don't address sin with, you don't address a person who is dealing with sin with hate. You address them with love and grace, because that's how Christ approached all the folks with you got to be frank about it. Again, we talk about the adulterous woman. We're talking about adultery here as well. The adulterous woman, she was dragged out, and we'll learn from in the next chapter when we talk about the punishment. They were going to stone her to death. Don't say where the man was. That was the other catch to this thing. But they had drugged the woman out, and they were getting ready to stone her to death. And Christ says, basically, the first one of you that is without sin, you can cast the first, or the one of you here who is without sin, cast the first stone. Christ could have thrown that stone. He didn't. None of them did, and they walked away. But he didn't tell the woman, hey, what you're doing is okay. I love you anyway. No, he said, get up and sin no more. That's the instruction. That's what and look, you're going to continually mess up because you are a flawed individual. I'm a flawed individual. I deal with these problems day in and day out. Not the ones we're talking about here, but my own issues, my own sins that I deal with day in and day out. It's the same. And that's the thing. Don't point at one specific sin like you see here and say, this is bad because it's here, but then not treat it the same way that you're treating the sin that you're committing yourself. Are you living a debauched life where you are just given into alcohol? Are you failing your children because you're not there for them and you're not teaching them in the Word? Are you stealing from other people? Are you defrauding people? What are you doing? What is it that you're doing? Are you committing some of these sexual misdeeds? Again, it's all sin. It's all sin. And if we try to ostracize one over the others, that doesn't accomplish anything for us. And if we try to just cast out people specifically because they're struggling with a specific sin that we particularly don't like, we're not offering them that chance for redemption. But that's not just on us. That's also on the individual to understand and admit and accept that what they're doing is sinful and work on it. Make positive strides to deal with it. Make honest attempts to deal with and address what they deal with. But this is one, chapter 22. This is the big one. This is the one that everybody wants to, well, not everybody, but a lot of the modernization of the church wants to get rid of this passage. You can't get rid of the Bible. You damn sure can't get rid of the Pentateuch. This is stuff come down from Moses. This is part of the Exodus. This is a big part, unrefuted part of the Bible. So you can't get past it. You can't get past it. You can't just stick your fingers in your ears, close your eyes, and make loud noises. Or you can't stick your head in the sand. You can't do any of that stuff and think that it's a problem that's just going to go away. No, it's not going to go away. It's just going to compound and get bigger and bigger and bigger until one day you've lost control. And that's like that with all sin. So again, there's balance there. There's balance on the people who surround the person who is sinning, and the person who is sinning themselves. That's part of the community. It's part of how we help each other. It's part of the Christian community, being there. Because when people come to us who don't believe, but who are genuinely searching Christ out, if we mistreat them, we've effectively pushed them away. We've effectively denied God a soul that he wants. He wants all of us. Here's the back. And he pairs this one up. Do not have sexual relations with an animal and defile yourself with it. A woman must not present herself to an animal to have sexual relations with it. That is a perversion. It's disgusting. No. It's also animal abuse. Get out of here. And again, we see when you start accepting one of these, the rest of them fall right into place. And we're going to get that selves. And that's the very next part of this chapter. Do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, because it is how the nations that I am going to drive out before you have become defiled. Even the land was defiled, so I punished it for its sin, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you must keep my decrees and my laws. The native born and the foreigners residing among you must not do any of these detestable things. For all of these things were done by the people who lived in the land before you, and the land became defiled. And if you defile the land, it will vomit you out, as it vomited out the nations that were before you. Everyone who does any of these detestable things, such persons should be cut off for their people. Keep my requirements and do not follow any of the detestable customs that were practiced before you came, and do not defile yourselves with them. I am the Lord, your God. And that's the thing. These are like dominoes. You start doing one, and they all start falling. And it didn't start with homosexuality. It started with adultery. Okay? Started with adultery. Started to normalize that. Started to normalize divorce. It's still it's still frowned upon somewhat, but other people are like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay to do those things. Ever been in the art? If you ever talk to anybody in the military, if you start doing a poll, you'll start to see right then and there how many service members and how many spouses are okay with infidelity. And it's not just them. You can go, but that's a great place to start, because folks are away from home a lot. Sometimes this and infidelity will drive a family apart. But some of them are okay with it. I've talked to Christians who are okay with infidelity. They don't see a problem with it, but you don't realize at that point that destroys something that God made specifically for a man to enjoy with a woman exclusively and not share that around. So that gets normalized. Adultery is normalized. We see it on television all the time, and we don't really look one way or there's usually a plot twist coming down the pipe about it, but it's not looked with the taboo that it should be. And it's certainly not the taboo that it was looked at 100 years ago. Then you have bisexuality, homosexuality, that kind of thing. That starts to get normalized. Again, this is not a call for visiting violence or even rude behavior. Or ostracization of somebody because they are doing this. But you also don't look at it and say it's okay. You don't permit it. You don't go, okay, that's great, that's fine. You just we shouldn't judge on that. No, you have to identify it for what it is. It's sinful behavior. Then we go to loosely related relatives. Well, browse a porn site, folks. Browse a porn site, and all you will see is loosely related themed incestuous porn. It's all over the place. It's a meme. It's a ridiculously popular meme to do for stuff like that. And I mean, it just feeds into that perversion. And you will find, if you dig deeper into it, again, normalization of incestuous behavior. It's all over the place. So it is what it is, folks. I don't make the rules, but they make sense. Again, All these rules surround the rules of the world, which was created by God, who made the rules. So obviously they all intertwine, and obviously it ruins the family unit. It's all these things break people emotionally and spiritually. And you might think you're okay if you're involved with it and you're okay with it, and you might think it doesn't affect you. It does. It does, and it's obvious. The only person you're fooling is you and maybe the other people who want to think you're right and want to agree with you. But a lot of times that they'll either put their blinders up, or they'll just ignore the fact that they know what's going on is unhealthy, but they would rather convince themselves that it doesn't matter. Again, you don't condemn you. It's not on us to condemn a person by their actions. It's on us to try to help them work through it. It's on the person to recognize what they're doing is condemnable behavior, but not from us, from God. Again, in the end, you're going to answer to him. And is Christ going to recognize you when you get there? Is he going to recognize you as one of his when you get there? Or is he going to recognize you as a slave to sin? It's heavy stuff, guys. If it's something that you struggle with, I feel for you. And pray and just try to deal with it. I mean, again, it's an issue. We're all addicted to a certain type of sin. Again, and some people don't even recognize it. What I like to say is drive down the interstate and see if you don't have it. Drive down the interstate for 50 miles and see if you don't have an unchristian thought about somebody. And if you can't, guess what? You've got a problem. We all do. We're all broken people. And that's why Christ lived an unbroken life and then had his body broken on a cross to die for our sins. Various laws. Lord said to Moses, speak to the entire assembly of Israel and say to them, be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Each of you must respect your mother and father, and you must obey my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to idols or make metal gods for yourselves. I am the Lord your God. When you sacrifice a fellowship offering to the Lord, sacrifice it in such a way that it will be accepted on your behalf. It shall be eaten on the day you sacrifice it or on the next day. Anything left over until the third day must be burned up. If any of it is eaten on the third day, it is impure and will not be accepted. Whoever eats it will be held responsible because they have desecrated what is holy to the Lord, and they must be cut off from their people. It's pretty cut and dry, folks. Just listen to the rules. Just listen to the rules. It's not easy, especially if it's something that's enticing you, but the rules are pretty clear, at least in this case. All right, okay. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Hold on, let me start that over. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time to pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am the Lord your God. I grew up in kind of the country, right? And we had professional and amateur farmers living around us. And we were I was one of the, or my dad was one of the amateur farmers. We got several acres of land that he would tend to, and we had a lot of corn, squash, pumpkin, snaps, all sorts of things, soy, lots of that stuff. But what the professional farmers that live near us would often do is put some of the extra stuff on the side of the road. And this is just to be neighborly. None of us were indigent, but they'd put that stuff up for people to grab because it was more than what they needed. It's what you find. A lot of farmers are like that. A lot of farmers are very pro-community in that way. Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another, do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Don't swear to God about something that you know is wrong, is untrue. Do not defraud or rob your neighbor. Do not hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind. That's terrible. Okay. All right, here we go. So my wife is hearing impaired, and we joke about it because we're married, and we poke fun at each other about a lot of things. She makes fun of my ADHD, and I make fun of her hearing, and she's very affable about it. But that's, do not curse the deaf. Maybe we should stop. Do not show or put a stumbling block in front of the blind. What kind of person does that? What kind of person does that? I think this is talking about this is not necessarily. This might be metaphorical here. Do not curse the deaf. Do not curse people who don't want to listen, or put a stumbling block in front of the blind, or try to trip up the people who refuse to see the truth of that is God. We're still talking about just God in here. We're not really recognizing in the Old Testament. There's not a recognition that there is a Trinity, right? But fear your God. I am the Lord. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbor fairly. So don't worry about folks who toadies to the rich and social justice warriors. Do not show partiality to the poor, social justice warriors, or favoritism to the great, toadies, but judge your neighbor fairly. The merits. Judge them by the merits of their actions, not by the color of their skin, not about how much money they have in the bank. And that regards how pale you are, how dark you are, how rich you are, and how poor you are. Doesn't matter. You stand on your own merits. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. Don't go around risking other people's lives. Do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly, so that you will not share in their guilt. Rebuke your neighbor frankly. This is an important one as well. Frankly, honestly. Do it honestly. Don't do it with hate in your heart. This is the tough one. And look, we were just talking about the sin of homosexuality. Guess what? It's no different from all this other stuff that we were talking about here, or that we haven't got to yet. All right? This is the problem. You've got the two sides. You've got the folks who want to normalize sin and make it acceptable, and make it so that the church approves of this stuff, which makes it unholy, which makes the church unholy. But you've also got the folks who want to. Pick their sin and ignore it, and judge everybody else by theirs, or pick the popular one. And like I said, among the folks who are conservative, who are more aligned with obeying these rules, they like to point. Homosexuality is a whipping boy for them, but a lot of times they ignore the spreading slander among your people, defraud or rob your neighbor, curse the deaf or putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. What we're talking about as far as cursing people who won't listen, and tripping people up who won't see truth for what it is. Do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. We all want an adversary. Let that adversary be Satan. Don't let it be your fellow man. Rebuke your neighbor frankly. We don't want them to choose the side of Satan, to choose the side that leads them away from God. So talk to them about it. Talk to them about it in a way that they'll listen. Frankly, honestly. Good people respond to honesty. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Keep my decrees. Do not mate different kinds of animals. Do not plant your field with two kinds of seed. Do not wear clothing woven of two different kinds of material. I think these are metaphorical here. The mating of different kinds of animals, I don't understand. You can't serve. this comes across later. God, you can't serve two masters, and you can't identify as a Christian and also to identify as somebody being pro-sin. If a man sleeps with a female slave who is promised to another man but who has not been ransomed or given her freedom, there must be due punishment. Yet they are not to be put to death because she had not been freed. The man, however, must bring a ram into the entrance of the tent of meeting for a guilt offering to the Lord. With the ram of the guilt offering, the priest is to make atonement for him before the Lord for the sin he has committed, and the sin will be forgiven. When you enter the land and plant any kind of fruit tree, regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years you are to consider it forbidden and must not be eaten. In the 4th year, all of its fruit will be holy, an offering of praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year you may eat its fruit. In this way your harvest will be increased. I am the Lord your God. That's sensible. Number one, the first 3 years is a sensible part. The 4th year is the honoring God, and the 5th year is reaping what you sow, doing what you need. Do not eat any meat with the blood still in it. My friends with the enjoying their rare steaks. Do not practice divination or seek omens. Do not involve yourself in witchcraft. Do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. Suddenly the locks on the Orthodox Jewish folks and the Eastern Orthodoxy make sense. I am well out of regulations on that. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourselves. I am the Lord. I don't cut myself, but I do have a tattoo on my back. Do not degrade your daughter by making her a prostitute, or the land will turn to prostitution and be filled with wickedness. Yeah. Don't pimp your daughter out. Don't pimp women out. Because if you put prostitution out there, guess what? It's going to flow. Observe my Sabbaths and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Don't call Miss Cleo, who I'm not even sure if she's alive anymore. If any of you younger folks will get the reference, do not go out and try to find these, again, magic elixirs or divinations or whatnot. It's not, if you're dealing with witchcraft, it's there. It's legitimate. Like I said, you might think it's supernatural stuff is hokey, but it exists. If you believe in God, you believe in the supernatural. Do not do this stuff. Stand up in the presence of the aged. Show respect for the elderly and revere your God. I am the Lord. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. This is a big one. This is a big one talking about that a lot of people relate to immigration. Like I said, there are some things that fall along political lines, but where it's not on us to obsess ourselves over the politics, it's on us to act in the way that we have been instructed to act. Do not use dishonest standards when measuring length, weight, or quantity. Use honest scales and honest weights, an honest ephah and an honest hin. I am the Lord your God. And hopefully he is visiting his wrath upon these spammers in the chat. Anyway, so don't use defrauding tactics. So we've got some ones in here. This will be an interesting discussion, some of these Levitical laws, to find out what the meaning behind them is. Some of them are very straightforward. Practice divination, seeks omen, but cut the hair at your sides or clip off the edges of your beard. What's that all about? Observe my Sabbaths, have reverence for my sanctuary. I'm the Lord. Revere the church, the building the church, and consider the Sabbath holy. That's important. That's pretty straightforward. Same thing. Don't make your daughters prostitutes. But tattoo marks. or branding, cutting, those kind of things. Don't do these things. But keep all my decrees and follow all my lords, and keep all of my decrees and all my laws and follow them. I am the Lord. Leviticus 20, our last for tonight. We're running long tonight. The Lord said to Moses, I say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Molech is to be put to death. He starts off hot right there. Child sacrifice. Don't do it. Don't do it for any reason, but specifically to Molech. He's naming him because that's a specific problem. The members of the community are to stone him. I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people, for by sacrificing his children to Molech, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. If the members of the community close their eyes when that man sacrifices one of his children to Molech, and if they fail to put him to death, I myself will set my face against him and his family and will cut them off from their people, together with all who follow him and prostituting themselves to Molech. So not only do you not engage in child sacrifice, you don't tolerate it. You don't ignore it. You see it, you pick that rock up. Now we're talking about punishments for sin. These are punishments we're told to do against our fellow man. But again, I think a lot of in this case, Christ's sacrifice does the takes away the requirement to punish for these, because again, you have grace, you have redemption, you have that path away from sin. You're not immediately condemned by it. That's a big one, though. Try keeping me from stoning somebody I see sacrifice their kid. I will set my face against anyone who turns to mediums and spiritists to prostitute themselves by following them, and I will cut them off from their people. Again, thou shalt not suffer the witch to live. That's a very true statement here. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and follow them. I am the Lord who makes you holy. I'm going to back up a second. Go back to chapter 6 about the witches. I have a coworker who I have a great amount of respect and love for, and she is a witch. She has wrapped herself in that identity. I don't work with her anymore, but I still, like I said, still love and respect her deeply as a person, and she is a person with a great amount of compassion in many things, and she's a good person. However, she has wrapped her identity in that of being a witch, and she says that is who she is. But there's a difference between being somebody and practicing that. But she practices witchcraft. It's a big sin, and she used to be Christian, and she doesn't believe anymore, so she's an apostate. And I try to take and we've had small back and forths about things and discussed why she doesn't believe, but it's difficult for me to see somebody like that, and I know that they're falling, and I know that they shouldn't be. I know that they know better, but they're choosing this, and in some way they think that because of who they are, who they believe they are, that they have to act in a certain way. More spammers. It's driving me nuts. Ugh, whatever. Again, you can address somebody and talk to them about it. Don't let them influence you. Don't let their sin influence them. Don't let their justifications, don't let their rationalizations influence you. That's when they talk about cutting them off for their people now, or to separate them, that doesn't mean don't be there for them when you need them, but that means cut them off from influence to you. She has to address those things, and if she ever wants to turn back, I'm going to be the first one there for her if she asks. And I've told her that before. I was like, if you ever want to talk about God, if you ever want to come back and believe, please talk to me. Please reach out to me, or whoever you feel, but know that I'm there. I'm there and available for you. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and follow them. I am the Lord who makes you holy. We're holy, right? It's up to us to keep ourselves holy. Anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. Because they have cursed their father or mother, their blood will be on their own head. I need to figure out what this means, because I've definitely cursed at my parents to their faces and to their backs, but never like put a curse on them. Or I don't think I've ever hoped that I've actually thought of wishing ill on them or cast like a legitimate curse. Again, this is these 3 chapters really I want to go back and talk about with Billy, with Eric. We'll make this a thing. If a man commits adultery, look, go back. I've cursed at my parents. That's a death sentence. If that's legitimately what that means, or if it's not referencing a legitimate, like an actual hex on somebody. If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress are to be put to death. Bingo there. If a man has sexual relations with his father's wife, he has dishonored his father. Both the man and the woman are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads. Meaning it's not going to be the guilt of the people who do it. If a man has sexual relations with his daughter-in-law, both of them are to be put to death. What they have done is a perversion. Their blood will be on their own heads. If a man has sexual relations with a man, and as one does with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads. If a man marries both a woman and her mother, it is wicked. Both he and they must be burned in the fire, so that no wickedness will be among you. If a man has sexual relations with an animal, he is to be put to death. You must kill the animal. The animals probably be happy about that. If a woman approaches an animal to have sexual relations with it, kill both the woman and the animal. They are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads. If a man marries his sister, the daughter of either his father or his mother, and they have sexual relations, it is a disgrace. They are to be publicly removed from their people. He has dishonored his sister and will be held responsible. If a man has sexual relations with a woman during her monthly period, he has exposed the source of her flow, and she has also uncovered it. Both of them are to be cut off from their people. That's a kink for some people. For a lot of these are kinks for people. This one's a little bit more mainstream. I don't particularly care about that one. As far as, that's not for me, but I know some people are into that. Do not have sexual relations with the sister of either your mother or your father, for that would dishonor a close relative. Both of you would be held responsible. If a man has sexual relations with his aunt, he has dishonored his uncle. They will be held responsible. They will die childless. If a man marries his brother's wife, it is an act of impurity. He has dishonored his brother. They will be childless. Keep all my decrees and laws and follow them, so that the land where I am bringing you to may not vomit you out. You must not live according to the customs of the nations I'm going to drive out before you, because they did all of these things. I abhorred them. But I said to you, you will possess their land. I will give it to you as an inheritance, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, who has set you apart from the nations. You must therefore make a distinction between clean and unclean animals, between unclean and clean birds. Do not defile yourselves by any animal or bird or anything that moves along the ground. Those that I have set apart as unclean for you, you are to be holy to me, because I, the Lord, am holy, and have set you apart from the nations to be my own. A man or woman who is a medium or spiritist among you must be put to death. You are to stone them, and their blood will be on their hands. I think that's a practicing one, but again, not sure exactly. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of very clear things here. There's a lot of unknowns as well. And so we'll close on that for tonight. But I have a good feeling we're going to be back in this, because this stuff, there's stuff, legitimate stuff in here that is questionable. Lots of people have tattoos. Lots of people, things that you don't necessarily think are harmful. Why are they rules? Cursing your father, cursing your parents. It's disrespectful. Don't know. Need to investigate further, but that's where we are today. All right. Again, next week's going to be hopping. We got Eric on Monday. We got Billy Dyer on Tuesday. We got Reverend Hans Feeney on Thursday. Thursday is going to be a late one. Folks, don't miss out. Folks, keep coming in. Folks, keep watching. I love you all, and y'all enjoy your time and enjoy your evenings anyway. With that said, have a good evening, good night, God bless, and Godspeed.